digestion is extremely important. Now, in the intestine, most people have a heavy mucus lining of the intestinal wall, which makes it impossible to, number one, to digest, and secondly, to assimilate. And so many people eat all the food, but they don't get the nourishment out of it. Here's where we have to clean off the intestinal wall. Now, the intestine cannot be cleaned off with a colonic, because a colonic will work only on the large intestine, which is below the small intestine. The small intestine enters through a little sphincter muscle called the ileocecal valve, which keeps the material in the intestine, the large intestine, from flowing back up into the small intestine, which often gives a person a lot of gas and distension of the stomach here, of the intestinal area, if that ileocecal valve is open due for any reason. So what we have to do then is to make sure that we clean off the walls of the intestine. Now, we can do this with the just went off. Excuse me, I had to turn the tape over. I want to talk now more thoroughly about this intestinal congestion on the walls of the intestine, a kind of a mucousy material that is scrubbed out by what we call isabgol, known also as flea seed, or also as your psyllium husks. And these hulls or husks are able to scrub out this mucus, a lot of heavy material which is lining the intestine. Sometimes it looks like an old rubber hose. And that stuff is gradually scrubbed out and cleaned out so that the villi of the small intestine can absorb the nutrients and then convert that into the proper substances which the bloodstream then carries it to the body. Now, another thing will help will be a kind of a compressed leaf alfalfa tablet, which will help to scrub it out. Now, comfrey pepsin is also used as a means of kind of breaking up that mucus lining of the intestines, where the pepsin digests it and the comfrey kind of gathers it up and expels it and cleans it off. Now, if you have an ulcerated condition in the intestinal area, in the mouth or any mucous membrane, white oak bark is one of the finest herbs I know of to help to heal that ulcerated condition where it's all inflamed, painful for the person. The white oak bark, take about 2 capsules with each meal, and in turn take the Schweitzer formula, which we'll talk about later. And the Schweitzer will help to heal that, along with the full program of enzymes and minerals and so on. And all of that comes right eventually. Now, if you have a problem with constipation, there are various herbal combinations that you can take, some of which contain your Cascara sagrada, and this in small amounts along with other types of herbs will help to move that bowels along and give you a healthy expression so that you have a smile on your face in the morning when you wake up rather than a scowl and a frown and you bark at everybody. For the older people whose digestion is not working, they should have a good movement 3 times a day, about a half an hour after each meal that they eat. Now, here's how this works. The meal that you eat contains some fats. As the food moves out from the stomach out into the small intestine, then you're triggering the liver to secrete bile, which is held by the gallbladder. The gallbladder goes squirt. The bile goes out into the small intestine. The peristaltic action begins in the small intestine due to the influence of the bile's presence. And this triggers the large intestine to have your peristaltic action, and then you have an evacuation of the bowels. Now this should happen after every single meal, about a half an hour to 45 minutes after you eat. If you're not getting this evacuation from the bowels, then you're going to be suffering from autointoxication. You'll have all kinds of fermentation taking place in there, and what will take place then is you don't feel good. All of your nutrients in your body are being used for cleaning up and neutralizing the toxins which are being reabsorbed into the body through the bowel. This is why we need to keep the bowels open. Now, sometimes we have a problem in the cecum area, which is like a kind of a cul-de-sac on the lower right-hand side of the intestine, large intestine. Now, oftentimes that gets clogged up with what I have found are what they call large dog biscuits. And it clogs up that cecum so that you don't get a proper flow out through the intestines. Here's where colonic irrigation, Kalima boards and so on have their place, but you have to know how to wash that water down into the cecum area, get that flowing down in that area so all those dog biscuits are emptied, and when that works, the cecum goes through its convulsion as like a peristaltic action. It pushes all that stuff out of there, and you have what they call a cecum dump. And at that time, it's like the hot water from the colon moves all the way out through the rectum, and it feels like somebody poured hot water in that particular area. And all this toxins come out of that cecum. So when you have a colonic irrigation, make sure you get a good cecum dump. It's very important that happens. Now, I might add that if you have an open ileocecal valve, all the toxins from the colon go back up into the small intestines, giving you nothing but distress. And so with body electronics, we show you how to heal that cecum, the ileocecal valve. And I might add the anterior lip is held open if the cecum is full of junk that has not been discharged properly. And so when that cecum is dumped, then that ileocecal valve can close because the anterior lip is no longer being held open, and then you have a normal flow of activity only one way out of the intestines, out of the small intestines into the large intestine, and eventually out through the rectal area. Now that's quite important to keep that colon working properly, because the small intestines and the colon operate, when you see them in the iris of the eye, operate inside of the what we call the autonomic nerve wreath, and everything is reflexed out from there. Now, since the body heals from the inside out, we have to make sure that our digestion is good and that our intestines are working properly and that the colon is evacuating properly. Now, let's talk a little bit about healing crises. As you're on the Ray program, the first thing that happens to you, which will be in the first week or two, and sometimes a little later, depending upon how toxic the body is and how long it takes it to adjust, we start dumping out what looks like yellow corn as floating on the top of the stool. Sometimes you'll have maybe 100 or 200 at a time, and you haven't had any corn to eat. You wonder, where did all that corn come from? If you check the endocrinology books very carefully, this is known as a carcinoid tumor. It looks just like yellow corn and is a precancerous condition. In my discussion with many surgeons, if they find that in the colon, then they usually will recommend that a person has their colon operated on and removed to keep the person from getting cancer in that area. Now, in the iris of the eye, in the iridology classes, we go through and show what that looks like, and you will identify it as something as like a 10 to a 15 power loop in the iris of the eye. And we'll talk about that in the iridology portion of our seminars. Now, first of all, the yellow corn comes out. And a person is very sick, nauseous, and has cleansing diarrhea during that time. Now, after the corn is removed from the body, the next thing you find, if it is there, will be things that look like little kind of gray pussy willows. And they might be amber in color, they might be gray in color in their advanced stage, and they have little black feelers coming off of them where they were attached to the inside of the intestine. Any surgeon will tell you this is cancer. And when they do exploratories, they look into the colon, they find it there, that means surgery. Now, these little gray pussy willows, when a person dumps those, at that time they go through a healing crisis and they feel very, very sick at that time. At that time, when a person starts feeling low and feeling miserable and sick and nauseous and diarrhea, you ask them, when did they feel that way before? And usually they won't remember at the time until the healing crisis is over. Please read my book 2 in the Logic and Sequence series on healing crisis. This will help you understand the reversal of the illness as a person regenerates their body. Now, in your intestinal area, colon area, after the fuzzies, we call these little white or gray pussy willow-like things fuzzies. Some people call them warm fuzzies, and I think you can have a smile on your face when you think of them that way. After these pass, you pass little things that look like little hunks of liver. They're usually kind of gray in color, and sometimes they're a couple of inches long, sometimes they're as big as 6 inches long, and sometimes these gray slabs will look like a potato, with all kinds of growths all over it. These are the cancers coming out of the intestine. Sometime this will be associated with a little bit of blood. You have to understand that, because they're coming loose from the intestinal wall, and as they pull loose, there's quite a blood supply going into these things, and a little bit of blood will be associated with that. Here's where you stay close to the person that has been trained and has been certified in the instructor seminars in body electronics, so that they know from their experience what has been going on, and they can be very helpful to guide you through these hard times. At that time, you should continue on with the program, and sometimes the bleeding will last 2 or 3 days, but it shouldn't be of a hemorrhaging nature. Now, after these cancers are gone, then we begin to look at the iris of the eye very carefully for what we call diverticulitis and diverticulosis. And the diverticulitis is when the autonomic nerve wreath has a very, very white color to it. The diverticulosis can be seen because you have a lot of little black holes in the intestinal area just inside of the autonomic nerve wreath. Now, sometimes you take a barium enema, you can see the diverticuli there. What we call the material inside of these outpouchings in the colon wall is called a fecalith. It's old, hardened fecal matter which has been pushed out through these outpouchings in the colon or intestinal wall, and it can cause a irritation which we call diverticulitis. Now, these so-called outpouchings are called a diverticulum, and that can exist all the way from the esophagus all the way to the rectum. There's no part of the intestinal tract which is immune. But what happens when you're constipated? It puts a tremendous stress on the circular muscle structures which surround the intestine. And these become ruptured, and the mucosa, or shall we say I won't call it mucosa, let's call it a membrane which lines the intestines. It will be much like an inner tube. And you stick your finger through this inner tube out through the ruptured circular muscle structures. That fills up with fecal matter, and then it gets kind of, at the opening there, it kind of scars off a bit, and that becomes encapsulated and stays there unless you have a program of a nutrient saturation nature and a restoration of nerve supply to that intestine through the use of body electronics. Now, when we get that taken care of properly, then you'll begin getting all these little painful things. Feels like rubber bands are snapping inside of your intestine. and it can be very painful. And these fecal lifts are then rejected and pushed out of where it has been herniated before, and where these outpouchings are, that fecal matter is pushed back out into the intestines, and the colon wall will heal, and a person will eventually be free of the diverticulosis, or what would be meant as the outpouchings in the colon wall, which can become infected, which is then diagnosed as diverticulitis. From a medical point of view, you can only use drugs and surgery, but I assure you that drugs and surgery are not necessary, and a person has a real smile on their face when they've dumped up to maybe 400 to 500 of these little, looks like a swollen herb capsule that's black to brown, and you cut it open, it's very solid, or it can be very, very sandy. And when these are passed out, then the body feels quite well. Some people pass a lot of stuff that looks like black sand, and this is the black sand coming from the fecal lifts as they're gradually degenerating within these outpouchings. Now that's important. I could go into great detail on that, but time does not permit on this tape. Now, this colonic irrigation, I want to add to this, is that it doesn't go up into the intestines. Therefore, we have to have a saturation of enzymes, minerals, essential fatty acids, protein with the proper digestive mechanism there. We have to have your niacin. We have to have your oxygen to add oxygen to the cells of the body, and we have to have all of your vitamins that come from your fresh and raw fruits and vegetables. Now, B-complex is one thing that is used up tremendously during the healing crisis, so we have to have a broad range of all of your B-complex properly. It should be properly, shall we say, diagnosed as to what the person needs, and you have to have a mega dosage of the B-complex. A little bit won't do the job. Okay, the next area we look at is the endocrine glands. I would like to put on this tape a little story. The body electronics usually takes care of the endocrine glands. Sometimes we have to use a little bit of kelp and dulse or things like that for the thyroid, a little licorice root for the adrenals. We mentioned already the papaya as used for the immune system, for the thymus area. But the thing that I have found that helps to lower the need for insulin, for example, in the human, and helps with the pancreatic problems where you have blood sugar abnormalities, is what we call cedar berries. Now, it can't be juniper berries, which resembles the cedar. It has to be the cedar tree with the cedar berries. And you take them and the dry cedar berries and you grind them up into a fine powder, put them in capsules, and take about 2 capsules 3 times a day, and this slowly lowers down the need for insulin in your diabetics. I've had people in 1 week's time come from 70 units down to 20 units, their need per day of insulin. And when that blood sugar begins to lower, you have to stay close to the laboratory and make sure that your blood sugar is proper for the amount of insulin that you're taking or other type of diabetic medicine. Now, here's one area you have to be very careful in is in the pancreas, where you have taking medication for the for the pancreas. When you're going into a healing crisis, this can come down very quickly, and the pancreas begins to function normally after a period of time, especially when you're holding sequentially the points on the body and you come to the pancreas and get that functioning properly. Now, if you take the spleen to get that functioning properly, we use what we call periwinkle. It's a myrtle leaf, and we take about 10 leaves in a green drink each day, and this has helped immensely. To get the functioning of the reproductive organs, we usually use ginseng, your gotu kola, Damiana is another thing that we use. Dong Quai is another thing that we use, especially in female disorders. Black cohosh is something that we use for women who have problem with their hormones, where they've had hysterectomies or they're going through the change of life. And you take black cohosh, it's wonderful as a natural estrogen. If you take too much of it, you get headaches. If you take too little, the hot flashes continue. So you take maybe anywhere from a half a capsule twice a day to as much as 2 capsules twice a day, and that will control the level of estrogen necessary, so you don't have to take these other types of estrogens internally, which has some very detrimental side effects. You just get a pill book. They call it the pill book. It's usually available in every good-sized bookstore. And take a look at the harmful side effects of estrogen. These are medically administered estrogens for birth control and other purposes. These are it's quite sad that people continue to use this and are not informed of the possibility of harmful side effects by the physician. It's a known fact that one of the side effects of using your birth control pills, which contain your estrogens, are cervical cancer, or cervical cancer as they call it in the North. Now, there are a number of things that we go into here regarding all of the endocrine glands. You can get a lot of this from studying very carefully the tapes on Health and Human Mind, the tapes on iridology, and we go into this material in detail. Now let's next talk about the lymphatics. In zone 6 in the iris of the eye, you have what they call the lymphatic rosary. The lymphatic rosary indicates what we call a trapped plasma protein, or what we call mucoprotein, which is a conjugate of undigested protein and undigested carbohydrate. Now here's where we need to take a large amount, like 2 capsules of protease 3 times a day, and 2 capsules of amylase 3 times a day. And what this does is it causes this mucoprotein to gradually digest. And sometimes it takes 4 to 6 months to see some very radical changes in the mucoprotein as it's coming out of zone 6 of the eye. Now, if you have an atrophic condition of your lymphatic system, where you have a congestion from zone 6 all the way down into zone 3, and you have this mucoprotein buildup showing an engorgement of the lymphatic system, or a real heavy-duty mucoprotein buildup in there, then it's going to take a while to clear that out, and you're going to have to be patient with yourself. But let's put it this way, it's been a long time forming. It's going to take quite a little bit of time, maybe a year or so, to pull all that out of there, to digest it out so that the mucoprotein disappears. Now, during this time, the mucus will come out of the nose, the sinuses, it'll come out of the ears, it'll come out of the mouth, dripping down the throat. It'll come out of every single orifice in the body, and just be prepared for that. The more extensive works that we have on tape and film will show a lot more information on this. Now, exercising on a little mini tramp, 30 seconds 3 times a day, will help to move the lymph. That's very, very important. But if the lymph is clogged up where the molecules of the mucoprotein are so large, they will not enter into the channels of elimination, like a one-way sewer system, which we call the lymphatic system. Then we have to use the enzymes in a saturation dosage to get that out of there. It's very necessary to walk and swim every day and keep the muscles working. Now, next thing I want to talk about is if you have in the zone 7, which is called the cellular level of the body, some people call it the skin level. The skin is the only thing that we see. We know that the nutrients are not getting out to the cellular level if we have what we call a black scurf rim. We know that the nerve supply is not there. Now we have to restore the nerve supply, and this is done through body electronics, and then through the nutritional program we have to get the nutrients out to the cellular level, and this is why we need the niacin. Now the niacin will help to get the nutrients to the cell level. Niacin is a vasodilator. It causes a niacin flush. You get hot and itchy all over. If you take too much to begin with, then it can make you feel very, very miserable for about an hour or two. I had one friend that thought, well, if a little bit will do it for you, then he took a full teaspoon of your niacin and heaped it up and over, took it in a glass of water, swished it down, and he was red hot and boiling for about 6 hours. And no matter how much he stood under cold water, it didn't help one bit. So start out small in your niacin and gradually build up. Now, niacin is exceedingly important because you can stand in front of a mirror during a niacin flush and you watch all the old sunburns kind of come and go. You remember the old tank tops you used to wear, the bathing suits you used to wear, and your memories of sunburns will come back. This will bring you eventually to the point, as you increase your niacin to get the niacin flush. Start out with maybe 100 milligrams, 50 milligrams, sometimes for some people will be enough. And you gradually build up to about 1,000 milligrams a day each time you take it. And this 1,000 milligrams should be as far as you should go on your own. We have some people under very careful guidance go up to as much as 3,000 milligrams a day, and this makes them actually, after a period of time, radiation resistant, where they can go out into the sunshine and not get a burn. I might add that during the Second World War, a lot of the, I'll just state this briefly, you had two groups of soldiers, privates. One group did not have any supplementation of niacin. The other group had niacin supplementation with some vitamins and some minerals. Now what happened is, as they increased their dosage, eventually they became immune to the niacin flush, didn't have it, until they went up as high as 3,000 milligrams per dosage. And that's a lot of niacin. Now you don't take your niacin without a supplementation of other B vitamins. You remember this, because the niacin can be harmful to the body if taken alone. You have to have the broad range of the mega dosages of B complex to help balance out the niacin. Now, this is wherein you have to be very careful. A little knowledge, again, is a very dangerous thing. But over a period of months, this one group built up the use of niacin along with other nutrients. And when the bomb blast went off at Bikini, your control group were there, and the ones that had no niacin supplementation were severely burned by radiation. The other group that took the niacin on a regular basis had no after effects of radiation burn. Now, so in this day of uncertainty with atomic warfare or nuclear warfare being a possibility with its death-dealing radiation experiences, I would advise everyone to build up their bodies in such a way that they become radiation resistant. And a person will go through niacin flush after niacin flush. You'll see the outlines of old sunburns on the body, even genetically inherited weaknesses in this area of the skin, where people have had this taking place over a long period of time. Now, caring for the skin is very important. We do recommend dry skin brushing all over once daily with a natural bristle brush. And the natural bristle brush gets all the little crystals out of the cells of the skin and stimulates it. And then we follow that with a lukewarm shower without soap, followed by a cool splash. Not a cold splash, a cool splash. We don't want to shock the body. Now, soap should not be used on the skin because it removes the outer layer of oil on the skin. And that outer layer of oil interacts with the sunlight, forming vitamin D, which then triggers the parathyroid hormone or parathyroid gland to secrete the parathyroid hormone, which will help then the body to assimilate and properly utilize the calcium in the body. Now that's extremely important. Now another thing that we do recommend is that we get the Schweitzer formula on the skin to help with the healing of the skin. Let me go over the Schweitzer formula carefully here with you. I'd like to give you a little bit of information from what we call the amazing Schweitzer formula story. Number one, the Schweitzer formula is a mineral biological toxoid developed in 1915 at the Speyer House Institute for Thermal Therapy in Frankfurt, Germany, and sold throughout the world since 1920. It is not a drug or a chemical. It is an organic acid. Now, two, one must have studied in depth molecular biology to understand that the Schweitzer formula is an anionic subfactant containing an ionization constant based on Planck's constant, Einstein's unified field theory, and Professor Paul Ehrlich's side chain theory of immunology. This is the secret of the amazing curative and preventive powers of the Schweitzer formula. Number three, it has been established that all disease can be cured by thermal therapy, which is anelectric, that is, non-frictional. Electric friction damages the functioning of the complex molecules which compose the individual human cells by causing an imbalance in their natural magnetic dipole moment. The Schweitzer formula stops the frictional damaging heat by neutralizing the disease-causing positive ionization with negative ions, while supplying oxygen to the cells of the human body, resulting in the natural infrared heat of the cell molecules and purified blood, healthy red blood. 4. The chemical formulation of Schweitzer formula is C14H10, BO72, and zinc. That's 772 on zinc. The chemical name is boridiothiotic oxybenzoic acid zinc. In the Schweitzer formula is a zinc boron cell in the molecular biological field. The toxicity is removed in the growing crystal, but it still retains its bacterial toxin. This zinc boron cell is a hydrated magnetic crystal that califies into infrared heat independent of the field of synthetic petrochemical medicine and general knowledge. The Schweitzer formula is a specific against all gram-positive organisms. 5. The Schweitzer formula is anelectric. Infrared heat caused by negative ions traveling at the speed of light. These are non-frictional bationic wet electrons. The Schweitzer formula is a true osmotic solution. 6. The Schweitzer formula is a universal disinfectant which stops unhealthy germs in the human body but does not damage or kill the cells of the human body. It is a universal solvent which thins and purifies the bloodstream of the human body and precipitates impurities from the cytoplasm of the human cells of the body. When the oxygen level of the bloodstream is over 85%, then anaerobic bacteria and viruses are destroyed. Oxygen therapy has been shown conclusively that A, B, and C forms of hepatitis are destroyed as well as HIV-3 virus. Oxygen therapy along with the Schweitzer formula make a very good team. 7. What we do here is we spray the Schweitzer formula locally on the skin. Every drop of the spray mist contains a pure zinc boron crystal which is absorbed through the skin into the blood. The pure mineral zinc boron cell is necessary for pure blood and pure cytoplasm of tissue cells in the human body. The Schweitzer formula contains a pure basic zinc carbonate enzyme which is necessary to maintain the pH value of the blood at 7.3 in order that life-giving oxidation reduction cycles of the heat of the human body takes place in the tissue cells and not in the bloodstream. 8. The Schweitzer formula correctly thins the blood and helps form healthy red blood cells. It heals burns on the skin. It stops the pain, blistering, and scarring of the skin tissue. The Schweitzer formula heals radiation burns of deeper cell tissues and the bone marrow, which are caused by radioactive elements in the water, air, and food. 9. The Schweitzer formula stops the growth of anaerobic bacteria, fungi, and viruses because it is a true disinfectant. Hospitals and doctors know that antiseptics and antibiotics kill germs and healthy cells of the human body, resulting in new unhealthy germs which the antibiotics cannot kill. There is widespread acceptance of biological pleomorphism, which is the activity of a germ changing to a new form to adapt to its new environment. Thus, when one changes the cellular environment with antibiotics, the new germs develop with new qualities, which increases the problem. 10. The Schweitzer formula is a deodorant and mouthwash, which absorbs an odor but keeps a natural fragrance. It stops acne when sprayed on and left open to the air. It stops rashes in athlete's foot. 11. It stops urogenitary rashes, itching, and all venereal disease when added with appropriate methods of oxygen therapy. The Schweitzer formula should be used for all feminine hygiene. Use diluted with pure distilled water for a douche. 12. The Schweitzer formula purifies the blood and cells of the toxic alkaloids of alcohol and drug addiction. Use 20 drops to a glass of pure distilled water and drink. Spray on head, back of neck, and spinal cord. 13. The Schweitzer formula heals the ulcers of varicose veins. Spray on and do not cover. The varicose veins will gradually shrink and disappear. It heals the scarring in arteries and veins and thus aids in the healing of scarring and heart attacks. 14. Schweitzer formula has been a powerful aid in helping to cure cancer naturally by helping to balance and purify the body. The Schweitzer formula increases the immune response by laboratory analysis with positive indication of increased phagocytic cell activity in the destruction of bacteria and other foreign substances. Other germicides kill bacteria and have a detrimental or a suppressing effect on surrounding tissues with no immune system increase. 16. The Schweitzer formula increases the capillary growth and capillary network in injured areas to help distribute nutrients to tissues to aid healing and restoration of normal activity. 17. The Schweitzer formula increases the fibroblastic and lymphocytic activity with increased epithelial cell growth, resulting in the rapid healing of injured tissue. 18. The Schweitzer formula reduces scar tissue when applied topically and internally. It reduces age pigmentation when applied topically. It increases temperature or hyperthermia in abnormal tissue growth. It is a superior stimulant to healing and an aid to tissue regeneration and growth. 19. For over 70 years in the use of the Schweitzer formula, there has been no contraindications observed. Used topically during a niacin flush, very positive results have been observed in skin rejuvenation when used in conjunction with the Ray program of nutrient saturation and body electronics. Apparently, the Schweitzer formula acts as a catalyst in helping to increase healing and regeneration if other basic nutrients are present, such as enzymes, colloidal minerals, natural vitamins, essential fatty acids, and a full range of natural amino acids. 20. The Schweitzer formula aids in the rebuilding and restructuring of tissues during the healing crisis and genetic restructuring. It penetrates through the skin and increases the oxygenation and circulation to the tissue, thereby improving the metabolic function, thus helping to smooth out wrinkles, increase skin elasticity, and maintaining the ecology of the skin, which is required for its proper functioning. And I might add, if that's happening on the outside of the body, then what's it happening to the inside of the body? I'd like to add to this, it has been no secret that from World War II until the present time, the American Medical Association and the large pharmaceutical companies have launched a never-ending campaign based upon their policy to advertise and sell their synthetic petrochemical drugs to discredit the proven healing natural biologicals, or what is called traditional medicine. Traditional medicine is once again on the rise, wherein people are demanding, as is their inherent right, freedom of choice in health care, and it is a matter of time that people shall return to natural healing, which has been time proven to be of greatest benefit to mankind. People all over the world are now flocking to alternative medicine, as orthodox medicine has proven conclusively that drugs and surgery do not have all the answers, and people have found great help in alternative medicines as well as returning to traditional medicines, arising out of a oneness with nature. I'd like to discuss now the 12 points on minerals. Number 1. According to U.S. Senate document number 264, the official publication, 99% of American people are deficient in minerals, and a marked deficiency in any one of the more important minerals actually results in disease. 2. The body is equipped to chelate only a small amount of some inorganic elements from nature. Therefore, the body requires the minerals to come from plants in a chelated form, that the minerals may be properly assimilated and utilized. The efficiency of each mineral is enhanced by balanced amounts of the others. I might add here that if the mineral is colloidal, or less than half a micron in size, the body can assimilate that also and utilize it properly. 3. The body must maintain an adequate mineral supply to maintain a balance between internal and external pressures of the body cells called osmotic equilibrium. This state must be maintained for normal cell function and continued youthful health. 4. All nutrients such as vitamins, proteins, enzymes, amino acids, carbohydrates, fats, sugars, oils, etc. require minerals for activity. All bodily processes depend upon the function and action of minerals. 5. Trace chelated or colloidal minerals are more important in nutrition than vitamins. The vitamins can be synthesized by living matter, but the minerals cannot. 6. Vitamins are required for every biochemical activity of the body. The vitamins cannot function unless the minerals are present. 7. Minerals are the catalysts that make enzyme functions possible. Chelated or colloidal minerals combine with enzymes into an alkaline detoxifying agent which neutralizes the acid metabolic byproducts of the cells and other toxic conditions within the body and prepares them for elimination. 8. Hormonal secretion of glands is dependent upon mineral stimulation. 9. The acid-alkaline balance or pH of the tissue fluid is controlled by minerals. 10. All elements work together as a collective whole. If there is a shortage of just any one mineral and balance, if there is a shortage of just any one mineral, then the balance of the entire bodily activity can be thrown awry. A deficiency of one mineral may disrupt the entire chain of life, rendering other nutrients either useless or inefficient. 11. The concept brought forth by French scientists concerning the biological transmutation of the elements within the body makes it understandable as to why the body needs the broad range of chelated or colloidal minerals in balance to regain and maintain good health. 12. Minerals are therefore justified as a supplemental dietary substance, especially in these days when the mineral content of our fruits and vegetables are destroyed by petrochemicals and synthetic fertilizers. Minerals we have discussed, enzymes we have discussed. We've discussed the importance of vitamins from your fresh and raw fruits and vegetables. We discussed the importance of uncooked proteins such as coming from bee pollen, coming from raw fish, coming from other sources where there's a full source of amino acids. Chlorella, spirulina, and so on will fit this category, provided they haven't been heated or processed at a higher temperature. But I'd like to talk to you about the 12 points on essential fatty acids. 1. There are 2 essential fatty acids. These essential nutrients have been shown by leading researchers to be necessary for both the optimum health of the body as well as for freedom from degenerative disease. They are known as omega-3, which is alpha-linolenic acid, or ALNA, and omega-6, which is linoleic acid, or LA. 2. Along with proteins, essential fatty acids, or EFAs, are the building blocks of cell membranes and various internal cell structures. 3. The EFAs are necessary for the metabolism and transportation of triglycerides and cholesterol. 4. EFAs are necessary for the development and function of the human brain. 5. The essential fatty acids are necessary for proper function of vision, the nervous system, adrenal glands, and testes, playing a vital role in sperm formation and conception. 6. The EFAs boost metabolism, metabolic rate, energy production, and oxygen uptake. 7. EFAs, particularly omega-3, have been shown to decrease the growth of cancer cells, candida, and various anaerobic organisms destructive to the health of the body. 8. The EFAs are precursors to hormone-like substances known as prostaglandins. There are 3 main groups of these, known as the PG1s, the PG2s, and the PG3s. The prostaglandins govern platelet stickiness in the blood, arterial muscle tone, inflammatory response, sodium excretion through the kidneys, and immune function. 9. The PG1s and PG2s are derived from omega-6, while the PG3s come from omega-3. The PG2s are triggered by stress, and they will increase platelet stickiness, constrict arteries, increase inflammation, decrease sodium excretion, and inhibit the immune function. Under normal circumstances, the PG3s would keep the PG2s in check. Were the production of PG2s to go unchecked, serious consequences could well result. A lack or a deficiency of omega-3 will result in a lack of deficiency of PG3s. The ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 is also crucial, as excess omega-6 as compared to omega-3 should be no greater than 5:1. A typical ratio in most people's diets is in the excess of 20:1. 10. Excess non-essential fatty acids compete for a vital enzyme known as D6D. Thus, an excess of non-essential fatty acids can result in a functional deficiency of EFAs. The research indicates the ratio of non-essential to essential fatty acids should be no more than 1:1. A typical ratio for most people is in excess of 10:1, with almost all of the essential fatty acids being omega-6. 11. In the November 1986 Journal of the National Cancer Institute research indicated that omega-3 and one of its derivatives, as well as 3 of the derivatives of omega-6, were seen to selectively destroy human cancer cells in tissue culture without damaging normal cells. Point 12. Dr. Johanna Budwig, a German medical doctor and biochemist, discovered that the blood of cancer patients was deficient in EFAs. A yellow-green pigment was found in place of the normal red blood pigment or hemoglobin. Along with certain dietary improvements, she gave her patients 3 tablespoons of fresh flax oil as a means of getting EFAs into the body, and a flax oil is 55 to 65% omega-3 and 15 to 25% omega-6.